What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Data Delicacies, where we bring the best and brightest in the industry to talk all things hospitality, talk all things tech, and how data is becoming such an underlying part of what the consumer expects and what operators expect. Today, we have a very, very special guest, someone who shares the same passion of sneakers that I do. And I got mine in the corner. He's got his setup a lot better than I do. We have the one and only Ken Clay, who is the founder and co-founder and CEO of Foode. Ken, thank you for jumping on.
Pleasure to be here, man. Happy to be on here.
Love it, man. Love it. So let's dive right into it. We got a lot of cool stuff to cover here. And I think what we're going to talk about on the show today is very present in terms of what we're all kind of going through, what we've seen in the industry, and where we're seeing the shift of kind of like how we interact with any sort of media or anything we kind of go through today, which is this the sense of personalization, right? And we look at Instagram ads and Facebook ads, and anything you kind of speak in your living room kind of shows up on your phone nowadays. But I think we're starting to crave that now, even when it comes to experience, especially when it comes to hospitality. So would love to kind of start that as a topic, and that importance of personalization and what we're craving and our expectations as consumers. And talk about kind of your thoughts there and what you see as a huge opportunity that can be addressed as we look at how technology and hospitality collide together.
Yeah, for sure. How we look at it, at Foodie, we always kind of coin the phrase of the power of personalization. So that's how we think about that, is like, what is the true power of that? Which is why it's at the center of everything with Foodie, right? So, when we first got together, I told you about the journey and where we got started, right? And it was, we wanted to connect people to trusted dining experiences, right? Not the word best, because best is subjective, especially when it comes to dining. So trust was a big piece of that. Fast forward to current times, and you see this rise of artificial intelligence and Gen AI and those type of terminologies, right? I'm very blessed to have the co-founders that I do, who've kind of been at the cutting edge of building some of the most successful consumer, products and tools that we all use today. And, it all actually just boils down to personalization, right? And so by leveraging generative AI, that's how we've been able to stay true to our word, which was connect people to trusted recommendations, trusted experiences, and the most personalized, right? When you start with something that is personalized to the consumer, it means you're not selling them something, you're actually providing, a service and connecting them to something they want to be connected to.
God, yeah. And I love that just that changing of the terminology, right? Of like best versus trusted. And I think a lot of what you've built is kind of off their own users' data, right? Like, hey, based on kind of your own data, here's kind of where we recommend or trust us on what we're going to try and curate for you from an experience perspective. Because I think nowadays too, what I've seen talking to, a lot of operators is just a good meal just isn't enough anymore, right? Like there needs to be so much more. So the sense of experience, I know that a lot of stuff that you do it ties into kind of experiential events, and talk a little bit about that and how, it's becoming more at the forefront now. We're seeing a lot of entertainment spaces and events popping back up.
No doubt about it. And again, this is why we got kind of excited, right? When you think about hospitality from the very, very beginning was all about being personable, right? Personalized, providing that kind of white glove service. That's what hospitality is all about, which is why, again, we couldn't be more excited to be building what we're building in this space, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second of what we're actually building over at Foodie. But it's just the small things, such as, a waiter addressing you by your name, right? Understanding that you're here for a celebration, understanding that you've got a peanut allergy or a seafood allergy, right? So just those small details are what we mean by the power of personalization. And then once you kind of scratch the surface of that, so many other things can happen, right? Going to a dinner party and your favorite drink is already there at the table because the venue knows it ahead of time, right? That's where I think, and hope that we all kind of strive towards in the future, because I think that's what people really look for. Just that the personalized treatment.
Yeah, and I think nowadays too, when you talk about stuff like favorite drinks and food preferences, but even food restrictions, right? Like we're seeing so much more now, and not just from people that have dietary restrictions, but also just like preferences, right? Like some people are like, hey, I'm doing a keto diet, or I'm doing, fasting, or there's so many different variations of stuff that people are doing now. And they try to avoid certain things. And I think, actually, we had a previous guest on the show, Erica. She's one of the co-founders of a company that focuses on allergens and food restrictions. Is really cool stuff. And she gave, crazy stat about how many people in the world get affected by that. But also this concept of you almost feel excluded from something, right? It's like, hey, I know my favorite restaurants and I go there. And if I go somewhere else and maybe I'm allergic to saltfish, I may go to a seafood place, but there are options for people, but they're just maybe too afraid to speak up. They feel like they're excluded. They feel like whatever. A ton of that happening. And, I'm sure we all have friends we all know at least 5 people that have allergies or food restrictions. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
love that idea there.
One of them. Yeah, no, I'm one of them. And again, it was actually one of the core pillars of the thesis with Foodie, and right, kind of how we got started was I've got a peanut allergy and a seafood allergy, right? So my AI concierge knows that. So every time it gives me a recommendation, it keeps that in mind, right? Taking
Got it.
that friction out of just where can I go, to eat, right? So yeah, it's a huge deal, and it's again, it's why there's so much opportunity when you just boil it all down to the power of personalization.
So let's dive into the story about Foodie. Tell the
Yeah.
people about Foodie, kind of like, what kind of the current stage is, and where do you see the future of this thing being?
Yeah, absolutely. So still very early on, but I think that's why we love it so much because there's still, so much opportunity ahead. We do have some exciting announcements that we're going to make at the beginning of 2025. But yeah, I'm very blessed, man. Got the team up with longtime clients and friends of mine, the former president of Jordan Brand, Keith Hulamard, and longtime SVP of sales of Nike, Ron Walden, right, who also went on to kind of be very, very successful and known in the events industry. And they're the ones who actually approached me with the concept because they knew that I was in tech, previously had a tech venture that I exited from. And, they had just approached me with the idea of wanting to connect people to trusted dining experiences. And I was like, yo, that's great, right? There's a lot of tools out there that help kind of with discovery. There's a lot of tools out there that help with, kind of the social sharing element of it. But we really wanted to build a platform that thought about the entire dining journey, right? And the dining journey doesn't just begin when you and I need to make a reservation,
Yeah.
right? Actually begins when you and I are texting last week saying, hey, you're coming into Chicago. What do you want to do? Blah, 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 right? It starts right there, right? Where do we want to go for lunch? Are we going to meet up for drinks? Are we going to meet up for dinner, right? Where are you going to be at? So we thought about that all the way through to the end when you need to pay for your meal, when you want to share your meal and your experience with your network, so on and so forth. So that's the vision of Foodie is the platform that handles the entire dining journey specifically for the consumer. It's why you and I kind of hit it off when we first got introduced because it was
Yeah.
like, hey, we complement everything you guys do, right? Because
Yeah.
we're just focused on the consumer. And again, this is why I always say that I'm blessed because when you get to team up with, longtime Nike executives who built and launched some of the most successful consumer tools, in the world, really, you get to have kind of this like inside track of what works, what happens when you put the consumer first, right? And, it's an age-old Nike model, right? Put the consumer first, you'll always make money afterwards. So that's why, we're excited about what we're building.
Yeah, and I think what was great about the conversation we had too is that we talked about this, this app fatigue, right? Like there's so many different apps, there are so many different things. You have your Apple Watch here, you have your Aura Ring, you have this, you have that, you have OpenTable, you have all these different places where you're going in and having to, for that dining journey, right? Like you think about it let's say for someone that's traveling or goes out to eat a lot, sometimes that's like 5 to 6, 7 different platforms, right? Like depending on which reservation platform, if you're going directly to the restaurant or if you're just walking, whatever that looks like. I think
Yeah.
that's the other piece too, where we're seeing people have the sense of, hey, I don't want to keep downloading apps and I'm not going to keep updating it. And if it's not easy with single sign-on, I have to keep uploading my profile here and here and here. And I think that's what you really wanted to do is consolidate all of them in one place to make it super simple. And then the concierge kind of acts on top of that because they have all of your data.
Exactly, right. So at the core of the Foodie platform, which is why we always refer to it as a platform, because again, we don't just want to be another app. We don't consider ourselves an app, is right? Our concierge. So we spent all of last year, after we became venture backed, building our own AI model called E that learns from the individual consumer, right? Because again, we never want to just push recommendations to you. We don't have an algorithm, right? The algorithm that you see inside the Foodie platform is just your preferences, your network, your restrictions, so on and so forth, right? And so at the center of our platform is E, and we did this on purpose because you asked about what the future of foodie looks like. It looks like, and we're hopeful for, and we have a lot of things lined up at the beginning of 2025 that we're going to reveal, where E is actually going to exist in a lot of other tools and apps that people and consumers are already using, right? Especially when it comes to hospitality and the travel industry.
Yeah.
Um, when you and I first got connected, I was like, hey, listen, I want to be OpenTable's best friend. I want to be Resi, Talk, all of these platforms' best friend because all Foodie wants to do is build the ultimate consumer tool for the diner that connects them to the trusted dining experience that they want to play with. So we're really just a user acquisition vehicle for all these other amazing companies that make up the dining journey.
Yeah, and that's, I think for, someone like my wife who's a big foodie and is in the cities, always going to restaurants, and then myself who's always traveling, having that concierge and being able to plan that stuff out ahead of time, or just even knowing, okay, like, hey, which part of the city should I go? Or based on my preferences at home, what should I look for in this city? And can that stuff already be set up? Because sometimes you're busy on the road. Okay, man, I got six people I got to go take out. Where do I get that done? And you don't want to look like, oh crap, I don't have this stuff organized. Whereas I think that's where the help comes in. I think convenience nowadays. I mean, I know for myself, if it's convenient, and how much it costs, it's like I'll take the convenience over the hassle of doing it myself.
We talked about, the sneaker addiction, right?
Yeah.
And there's something in Nike, kind of abides by this. There's a study out there that people actually don't even look for discounts anymore. They really look for access and they look for convenience, right? And then they're willing to, pay for that. So, a lot of the things that we do when it comes to perks for our users and when it comes to, activation, stuff like that, it's really not even about, perks. It's about access. It's about connecting them to places that they can't usually get into or experiences that they may not have been able to find, right? Because they're not widely known. So those are some of the advantages that we look to incorporate, in our solution for the consumer.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that, man. I think it's it's much needed. I thought about this a lot where each platform now requires their own kind of like separate thing to go, and then you just lose track, right? I mean, I even think about in my house, I've teched out my house, but there's certain stuff where like I try to have it live in the Google app as much as I can, and I'll just control it through there. But then certain stuff I have to go into the app, but I haven't used it in so long, it hasn't updated, and it's this whole thing, right? So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, that concept of like an open ecosystem friendly play, I think is what we need to see more of. I think this concept of building a moat is very legacy and that worked back in the day, but now with technology, people expect everything to be seamless across your different apps and across your different platforms.
100%. And again, it also goes back to, right, like on this is the most expensive real estate in the world, right? Like you're most times people build an app and people always approach me, I've invested in a few apps and they're like, hey, I want to build this app. It's like, okay, well, here's the deal. If you're going after a consumer, the average consumer opens up 5 apps a day, right? Email, one of their favorite social medias, maybe a text message, maybe a weather, right? You've got to infiltrate that habit. Then you're going to start competing against people that are already in your space and so on and so forth, right? So if you don't impact the person's everyday habit, it's going to be a lot to try to get them not just to download your app, but to actually use your app, so on and so forth, which is why we're always thinking like, okay, cool. As a platform, right? How can we add value to the person's life, right? To their habit? And then how do we, keep them, right? What are some of the ways that, they would come back to it, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that's fooding.
Yeah, super cool stuff, man. Again, I know that we've been chatting about a while, so it's great to see kind of the journey where you guys have come and the cool, I mean, the amount of users you're bringing on and what you guys have to announce. So we'll keep a close eye. I'm sure a lot of people will be super interested in chatting more. Want to kind of shift the topic a little bit here. Another kind of part of the industry that you're very kind of devoted to and trying to kind of change a bit is, kind of actually, before I get into that, I did have a question for you because something
Yeah.
just came up is we talk about all these different apps and different things that are going on, right? That, there's so many different places when it comes to personalization, there's loyalty, there's marketing. And just so I guess people get a sense of the visualization of this, where do you sit? Where do you see yourself sitting amongst all of these different players in the industry? Do you see yourself kind of layering on top, a foundational piece below? How do you see yourself sitting in that?
Yeah, great question. So, we really see ourselves as the conduit for all of those solutions for the consumer, right? The same way that, you guys are the conduit for all these solutions
Yeah.
for the restaurant, right? We're doing that same philosophy and concept for the consumer. So, again, right, our biggest comparison that I always use, right? Think about the power of the Starbucks app experience, the power of the Chipotle app experience, McDonald's app experience, right? What they do so well is they make every single experience personalized and seamless, right? Meaning no matter if you go to a Starbucks in South Side of Chicago or if you go to a Starbucks in Toronto, right? You're always going to have that same frictionless personalized experience because that's what the app provides.
Yeah.
Our philosophy is we want to be able to do that for every single dining experience that you go to. So whether you're at your local coffee shop or your favorite full service sit down restaurant like Nobu, right? All you need is Foodie to get your recommendation, then to book a reservation because we're going to connect to all the major reservation platforms. Then when you get to the dining experience, right, what are you going to do? You're going to look at the menu, you're going to order off your menu, right? This is why the rise of the contactless, payment solutions, right? Well, that's going to be integrated into the Foodie wallet. So you can preload, you can pay all through the Foodie application, right? And then the whole social sharing element. So when you
Yeah.
share that experience that you love, you can share it to all your favorite social channels. And that's what we mean by kind of the end-to-end solution for the dining journey.
Yeah, I mean the social piece I think is huge right nowadays. It's like, did you even go to a place if you didn't post on Instagram, right?
Right, right,
My wife,
exactly.
I can't touch the food unless she takes the pictures first. I've learned my lesson the hard way on that one. So no,
Oh,
again, definitely wanted to tie the bow on that one because I think that's super important to understand. And
yeah,
I love the way you're looking at it as a very connected approach because again, you have to, right? Because it's just again, we talk about that moat and it just becomes too tough if you try to go at it on your own. It's just too much data living elsewhere. So
absolutely.
again, to go back to this, something that you're very passionate about is this concept of global waste and food insecurity. Talk a little bit about that. I know it's a big part of the foodie ethos. Share it with the listeners, kind of like how you're tackling that.
Yeah, so this really came to life, like I told you, when we started Foodie, it was we wanted to make sure that it had an impact on everybody's life, right? Now, what that meant when we started was we didn't want to build an app that wasted people's time, right? It wasn't really until this past July when I had the incredible experience of going out to Necker Island with Richard Branson, right, and got together with 20 founders and 20 investors from all over the world, and the whole thing was, think bigger, right? That was the theme of the weekend. And so when we're talking about what everybody's doing kind of with their respected ventures and their businesses, so on and so forth, it was, what can you do with your efforts to do something bigger, right? And so as I was explaining Foodie, right, I'll never forget it, right? Richard was like, that's cute. You're gonna help me get to, restaurants in Chicago. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, Ken, you do realize that when we opened up and started talking about each other, you talked about how passionate you were about fighting the global crisis of food insecurity. Because growing up, I was impacted by food insecurity, right? He goes, you do realize you're building a platform that can empower the 163 million people who dine out 3 to 4 times a week,
Mhm.
right? To also fight that effort. And I'm like, huh? And he goes like, think about the Tom's business shoe model, right? They didn't make it easy to buy a pair of shoes. They made it easy for everyone to donate a pair of shoes,
Right,
right?
right.
And so as soon as like that weekend happened, it was just like, oh shit, and a light bulb went off, right? Like we went from just a cute little app that can help you find a place to go to eat in Chicago to, oh wow, this is a platform that can empower every single consumer to make an impact against food insecurity. So how we do that is we take a portion of every transaction that happens through the application when a user pays for their meal, and we actually donate it towards a local food initiative within that community. So you, as the consumer, get to see the exact impact you've had just from dining out, right? And so it's no extra cost to the consumer. It's no extra cost to the merchant because we actually take it out of our margin, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's I mean, very commendable, right? I think that's we need more of that. It's something that I think a lot of people talk about, but there's not a lot of action on, right? I mean, again, to your point, we talked about this where the tech is there, the people are there, but where's the action? So yeah, big ups to you guys on doing that kind of stuff. And again, taking on your own margin too. It's, very commendable. And excited to see kind of if other folks can kind of follow suit and where this goes. So yeah, definitely wanted to talk about that because I know it's something that it's top of everybody's mind, but it's one of the things where I look at stuff in the industry, and we chat about this a little bit, but how many problems that are being solved are like nice to have versus need to haves, right? And this is like a need to have, and it's always been and always will be. We see it happen. This concept has been and across all over the world, right? I mean, whether you're in a developed country or a third world country, whatever it is. I mean, I grew up in a kind of same situation where I've seen that, and you see the contrast. And nothing irks me more than these. You do a big catering order, you go to a buffet, and the amount of food that just sits there gets thrown out. It's
Yeah.
insane. And here we're I mean. I hate to say it, but we're kind of used to it because it's the world we live in. But in other places, it's like, they'd be jaws would hit the floor if they saw that.
Oh, dude, it's incredible. And, one of my investors who's become literally like one of my best friends, my mentor, I call her, my fairy godmother as well, Cynthia Williams, she coined this phrase called pre-purpose, right? So we're going to be rolling out these pre-purpose campaigns. So every time we do a foodie experience, right, and we have these large catering orders and so on and so forth, we're going to make sure that none of that food goes to waste. So having these zero waste initiatives is a pretty big deal, as the company.
Yeah, very dope, man. Love that. Love that. So excited to see what you guys do there. So I want to take a step back here. I mean, the foodie story has been awesome and great to see, and excited to hear those announcements you're coming out with. You obviously keep your ear very close to the ground on the industry and what's going on, and you meet a lot of very cool folks. What are some of the trends you saw this year going into next year, that excite you? Like some new stuff where you're like, hey, this is going to change the way things are done.
Yeah, I think it's what excites me is you have a lot of successful founders, a lot of successful business people coming into the dining space, right? And not acting as know-it-alls, because again, this industry's been around for forever, as we
Yeah.
know, right? And the number one thing that irks restaurateurs and hospitality professionals more than anything is young tech bros coming in and trying to tell them how to run their business or whatever the case may be, right? Which is why, again, we're very cautious of that. But I look at things like Wonder, for example, and Mark Lohr, who's very, very successful, right? And he's probably one of the most, ingenious minds when it comes to logistics and it comes to things like that. I know it's very polarizing topic right now with what he's doing, but that excites me because, just like with Foodie, where we want to create one vertically integrated solution, for a consumer, he's kind of thinking that same way,
Yeah.
right? What happens when you combine all of these things and own all of these things, right? You should be able to provide a better consumer experience. You talked about, a lot of these venues now that are going for more than just a nice meal, right? There's entertainment in these spaces. So really, people are really thinking about the experience more. So I wouldn't say that it's like one solution or AI this or what it could be. I think it's actually just people putting the experience at the forefront. And I hope that trend continues in 2025 because I think that's what people are really longing for.
Yeah, yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think this concept of hybrid dining. You see places like F1 Arcade and Flight Club and Putt Shack and Top Golf. It's going crazy, and it's always a good time. And I think it always, what I enjoy about it is it kind of makes me feel like a kid again in some ways, right? You grow up going to Dave and Buster's and Chuck E. Cheese, and then it's like, that's for kids now. But now it's like, no, as an adult, you can still enjoy those things. But I feel like nowadays too, I'll get, let's say I see some of my friends I haven't seen in a while for dinner, right? And then like you have those in between breaks, we're all just looking at this thing. And it's like, okay, look, half the time we're in group chats with each other anyways. But,
Exactly.
but it's like, how do we to put that away and just enjoy, disconnect for a bit and actually just enjoy doing fun stuff. And you add a little bit of competitiveness and, it's a great place to take, corporate events and all of that. So it's cool to see that whole thing growing again. And pickleball has become huge now and all these really cool concepts. But what I like about it is that it's pretty inclusive to everyone, right? You have older folks that can come, younger folks that can come, and it brings kind of all these different people together. So it's really cool to see how folks are trying to be creative and innovative in that space.
Yeah.
But it's also a challenge, right? Because operators like, damn, like just being a good restaurant now just doesn't cut it anymore, right? Like how do you, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, it goes back to that word we talked about personalization, right? And so what I think that it does, it will actually expand the
mhm.
industry, right? Because like you said, pickleball this, F1 arcade this, Top Golf, like there's a basketball one that I just saw, that's coming out. Those look
Yes,
amazing.
yes,
And again, this is what drew us to Foodie from the very beginning was realizing food sits at the center of every culture, community, it doesn't matter what race you are. So like everybody always remembers that meal, right? And so now keeping that meal at the center of everything, but then adding all of these experience elements around it, I think is just gonna, explode in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think just seeing some of the stuff too. I think the margins on the stuff are usually pretty good too when you can add the entertainment aspect, right? I know in Toronto, one of the things that's super popular here is like these kind of like loungy bowling alleys, right? So you have
Yeah.
bowling, but you can get drinks, you can throw a party there. They have a DJ, they show sports, right? And then they also have like little arcade stuff, which I love bowling. I've always been a big fan of bowling, but now you can do it as like a nighttime activity. It's not just like, oh, I'm gonna go bowl during the day and there's a bunch of kids there. It's like, hey, I can go with my friends and it's a date night, whatever that is, which I think is awesome. And it's cool to see how much more of that's popping up. And again, to your point, basketball's coming up, right? We're big basketball guys, so it's always fun to see that. I guess the only thing you have to worry about is like not getting, sweaty in your nice clothes, whatever. Uh, yeah,
Exactly.
it's really cool to see that. What would you say? I mean, you talked about some of the stuff that excites you. What would you say are kind of your predictions of major trends or big things that are going to happen in the industry for next as we go into next year?
Yeah, I think there's going to be again big investments, that are going to happen, right? I think people were very weary about, what was going to happen with the economy and all that kind of stuff this year. But now that, there's some positive sentiment, in that regard, I'm seeing a lot of activity kind of from the, venture capital space and private equity and consolidation and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. So I'm actually excited about, what some of these major investments are going to do. Hopefully there's some investors out there looking at Booty, or what we got going on, but that's kind of what I'm looking forward to in 2025 to see a lot of these concepts come to life because, again, it's wanted, right? People are lining up and chomping at the bit, as a consumer, to get access to this stuff. So it'll be fun to see it all come to fruition.
Yeah, yeah, excited. I think next year is going to be a huge bounce back year for the industry, and there's going to be a lot of cool creativity that comes into the space, which I think for what I like about it too is, us being on the tech side, we're also in turn consumers, right? So we're like
Right.
we can be that case study in ourselves where it's like sometimes, if you're I worked at other companies where it's like, okay, well, I'm not the other side of this, so it's like hard for me to relate. But in this, it's like with hospitality, everyone is connected in some way, shape, or form, which is what I love.
Correct. Yeah, the customer feedback is pretty quick when you're the consumer, so it's pretty nice.
Exactly. Cool, man. So, love everything you shared. And kind of usually how we wrap up this show is with a quick lightning round. So I'm just going to throw a few questions at you first that comes to mind. So, first one, you're a Chicago guy. What's your favorite restaurant in Chicago?
Oh man, great question. So on the West Loop, in the West Loop, it's Elsky. Got to give a shout out to my guy David Posey over there. If you're in the Gold Coast, got to go over to Adelina and visit my guy Matt over there. Can't go wrong. Obviously, you got to have a steakhouse, so put Chicago Cut, right there, kind of in the middle. But right now, man, the food scene in Chicago is booming, especially over in the Fulton Market area. So you really can't go wrong, which is cool. But if you have any recommendations, just download Foodie and you'll have a trusted one.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, I honestly, Chicago is one of my favorite cities in the States, and yeah, the food scene and the cocktail scene there and the speakeasy vibe, I love it. It's always, especially the Fulton Market, West Loop, all that area is great. You're a big sneakerhead. What is your GOAT sneaker?
Goat sneaker, man, it's any of the 11s, dude. Like Christmas time every single year they get me. It's unbelievable. I got the new ones that I just copped from my guys. So the all whites, a little baby blue in there, which is
Yes,
just
yep, yep.
my one that I take great pride in was the one that was gifted to me. It was the original off-white ones that my co-founder gave to me. We had a big milestone. So,
Nice.
I rock those proudly.
Dope. And then what's a sneaker that is your grail that you don't have yet, but it's like, hey, milestone, like this is like my one shoe I gotta go get.
Yeah, so that's a tough one, but it'll still be the off-white, the red and black one, the Chicago, right?
Yep.
The red
Yep.
and black last one. I gotta get that one. Buddy of mine that I tease, he has the knockoff ones and he wears them everywhere and he gets all these compliments. He's like, "You should just get the knockoff ones." And I was like, "No, man, I want the original. I'm saving up for the
I
original."
it's crazy, man. The knockoff stuff now, I mean, you can't tell the difference, but I've been like a true sneakerhead for so long. I just can't. I'm like, listen, if I can't get it, I can't get it. But you lose the whole allure of like trying to earn it, and if it's just you know
Exactly.
what I mean. So yeah, yeah. But it's interesting. Some of these places you can't even tell the difference anymore. It's nuts. So I mean, I kind of know. I have a sense what your answer would be here, but I want to ask you anyways. You travel quite a bit. and even just concept of foodie too, and kind of being a global concierge. What do you think is the best food city in the world?
Ooh. Um, So I'll exclude Chicago because obviously I'll be biased there. But actually, two that I love, Barcelona and Amsterdam.
Okay.
Those two cities surprised the hell out of me. Obviously heard great things about Barcelona, so on and so forth. But Amsterdam, oh man, fine dining, like street food. It was incredible. So I'll
Yeah,
put
yeah.
those there for
I've been to
sure.
both those cities. Amsterdam has a very eclectic mix of stuff. It's good. Yeah, like the donairs and stuff, they were actually really good, but they have a mix of everything because they're so central in Europe. And yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And you get all the chefs from like France and all over kind of just coming there and like kind of opening up their restaurants,
yeah,
whatever. It's kind of like the trend where, people from New York, like chefs would go to DC, for example, because it wasn't
yes.
that far. So they'd open up and just kind of dominate there. So it was a really cool foodie city.
Yeah, it actually, I mean, not throwing any shade at all, but I was super surprised with the food scene in DC. I didn't realize how big it was. It's
Yeah, it's
yeah,
popping. It's coming up, man.
yeah. That's cool. Okay, so switching topics again, who is the best athlete of all time?
Ha. Best athlete of all time. Great freaking question. Physical traits, LeBron James.
Okay,
Uh, Best pure athlete, Deion Sanders.
okay.
Best mental tough athlete, it's got to be the MJ and Tiger Woods, man. Like those two dudes, like they were just never out of anything. You never want to go up against them. It didn't matter how, big or strong you were. I was like, I would never want to go against those guys in anything.
Yeah, love it, man. And hey, actually, just I'll ask you one more question here is, you know, um, obviously you talk about Deion Sanders, you see Shedeur Sanders doing his thing in Colorado. What are your thoughts on this whole NIL getting guys getting paid? Like Shedeur, I think he's getting paid like 4 million a year.
Yeah.
AJ DeBenza just signed with he's going to BYU. I think he's getting like 7 million a year. Like, what are your thoughts on kids getting paid now in college?
It's about damn time, is what I have to say there. But I think I was before, I got into tech. I was in sports management, right? So represented NFL athletes, and it was what I always wanted to do. I was on the marketing side because I wasn't licensed, obviously. But my boss, who I still call my mentor, Blake Barrett's, right? He was kind of ahead of the curve at like helping a lot of these young guys think about this stuff, right? Because it was a business, and he always used to say, it was really ugly because a lot of these guys were getting paid underneath the table,
Yeah.
right? They were kind of getting not kind of they were getting taken advantage of, right? And so when you see a coach at a school getting paid 7 million a year, but the players weren't allowed to touch anything, even though they were providing that value, it kind of sits uneasy with you. So kind of seeing it now is pretty cool. I think that the NCAA, I think, didn't realize like how much of a wild, wild west it was going to be. So they probably were like, maybe we should put some regulations on this to start with.
Yeah. Do you feel, last question here is, do you feel it will take away from the love of the game for certain kids?
I don't think so. To be honest, I know that's a concern, for the thing. At the end of the day, these people want to win, right? Like they're the best at what they are. So does money help? Yeah, but you can't tell me that, when you see Shador yelling at Travis Hunter, who's probably the best college player we've ever seen, right? He's doing that because he cares, right? He wants to win these games, So
Yeah.
I think it's just going to elevate the play. There's always going to be bad actors, right? But those people aren't the ones who pan out anyways. So,
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, now we're seeing, seeing stars take cuts because they want to win championships, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like I think that there was a question. It was talking about James Harden, right? Where I think he's made over like 300 million in his career, and they were comparing him to say like, hey, would you rather have James Harden's career or Robert Ory's career? I think that was a poll on
yeah,
one of the things, and there was like so much back and forth. That like, I'll take the championships and less money. Other people like take $300 million. Like, are you crazy? So
right, right,
it's
right.
interesting to see people's things and. Yeah. So, anyways, man, I'm sure we could talk about sports stuff all day, but we'll wrap up here. Ken, can't thank you enough for joining on, man. I'm super excited about the foodie stuff, what you guys are doing. So excited to see those announcements you come up with. Before we wrap up, any last parting words?
Yeah, no, first of all, man, keep doing what you're doing. This is awesome. I remember when you were first rapping and you were talking about, hey, I'm going to launch this podcast for the company or whatever. So it's been so cool to follow
Appreciate
and
it.
come to life and stuff like that. So it's really cool to be on here. But I'll kind of wrap with this when it comes to foodie because I didn't answer it earlier. And you said, what's the vision, right? Our vision is that when you walk into a restaurant, we're going to provide every restaurant, every venue with their own E. So when you go in there, the E's are going to know one another, and it's going to know that Arun loves sparkling water versus tap water, right? So it's already going to be there at the table. And that's what we mean by, how we want to elevate the dining experience and connect the consumer with the venue and the restaurant. So yeah, man, that's where we're going. That's what I'm excited about, and I can't
Love
wait
it.
to live.
Love it, man. Can't wait to see that. I want my E to be like have my espresso martini ready with three beans
There
and
you
just the way I
go.
like it. There with a
There
little bit of
you go.
mezcal. That's there we go. So
Make
last
it
thing, Ken, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, definitely follow me, on Instagram, KClay16, or sorry, KenClay16. My email, right, ken@foodie.us. Visit our website, www.ken or foodie.us, or reach out to you. You got my number. So,
So yeah, and we'll share all your details as we release the show. So we release every Wednesdays. So that was another dope edition of Data Delicacies. Thanks for tuning in. We've wrapped some amazing shows, episodes this year. So thank you for everyone that's jumped on. Excited to have a ton of great more guests as we go into next year. And of course, keep track of all these amazing founders we brought on the show because they're going to do some really, really cool stuff. And these are the type of people that are really going to push this industry forward and see some change. So again, I'm your host, Arun. This was powered by Incentivio. If you are interested in being on the show, we do have some last spots available for kind of the last few episodes we're going to be doing here to wrap out the year. Reach out to me directly at arun@stivio.com or find us on LinkedIn. But make sure to catch up on our episodes and comment, share any feedback that you have. So, Ken, thanks again for joining, man. Appreciate you.
absolutely. Happy holidays.